In this episode, we're going to be talking about why I have to high mount the turbo on my Barra Landcruiser, and then we're going to be making the custom exhaust manifold from steam pipe to do so. We have one of those build defining days on our hands, so I have tried everything that I can do to low mount the turbo. The straw that broke the camel's back is the engine mount. There was a 10mm clearance between the hot side of the turbo and the engine mount. I'll flash up a photo. I just can't see a way around that. So with the ceramic coating, I believe it brings it down around 35%. So let's work on rough numbers. If I ceramic coated the backside of the turbo, this thing gets to around 900 degrees, maybe more. That could come down to 600 degrees. And the melting / ignition point of rubber, from what I've read, is around 300 degrees. So that means I have 10mm to bring down 300 degrees, and I just can't see a solution to do that. So there's only one option as far as I'm concerned, which is high mounting the turbo. So what I did was try to use my FG manifold, and that didn't work. So I thought maybe I could just space it out, with some exhaust flanges or something like that. So I just put washers there. So these would replicate a 24mm spacer, so two flanges bolted together, and it's still touching on the rocker cover, so I'm not happy with that. Some other solutions to this problem that I thought about was cutting and shutting this face. However, I don't know that I have the ability to do it. Have a look at the complex geometry in here. I think this is beyond my ability as a fabricator to shift this face down here and make it smooth for the airflow, which is really important to the turbo feed. And another thing I thought about was actually clocking the face on an angle. I guess the problem with that, I don't really know a machine shop. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know how long it'll take. So I just decided, let's just try the B Series one. I can sell it for the same price that I bought it for. So I ran out today and I got a B Series exhaust manifold. I guess that's one of the big pros of living in a city. There's heaps of Falcon parts available. People high mount stuff all the time. So the B Series manifold, obviously, it's a different shape. I'm not actually sure about the runner lengths. I mean, they do look longer. But the face where the turbo mounts onto, there's a T3 mount, by the way, is on a different angle. So I'm hoping that I can low mount it with this one. But if not, I know that these ones definitely work on a high mount setup. But it means that you have to move the power steering reservoir. I am trying to keep a stock serpentine setup, but moving the reservoir wouldn't be the end of the world. I could just put a remote reservoir somewhere else. So that is sort of my thought process at the moment. I hope that I've explained it clearly enough for you all. Let's fit up this B Series manifold and we'll go from there. Just in case you're wondering, I'm trying to low mount it with this manifold. You got to test every scenario, clashing on the engine mount. So this one does drop it down as well as changing the angle. So that's why it's not going to work for my case. So first time mounting up the new manifold, you can see that it clashes against the power steering reservoir, luckily not the pump, so I can still maintain the same serpentine setup. Okay, something that I really don't love about this B Series manifold is that it's really close to the rocker cover seal there. And sure, in a street application it might be alright when you're not in the middle of nowhere, but realistically it's a similar problem to the problem that I had with the rubber mount. The pre-turbine temperatures can get up to 1,000 degrees, and it's just going to degrade this rubber over time, which will cause oil leaking, which is not what I want. So that actually rules out the B Series manifold for me. It's a bit of a shame. The turbo's in the right spot. It'd be awesome if it came just straight out and then up. So then this really hot surface here wasn't as close to the head. So the next option is to make a custom manifold. Like I just explained, one that comes out and up and has a turbo in roughly the same spot. I guess the other thing with the B Series is that the turbo is mounted fairly far back. So if you actually have a look, it's mounted way closer to the back of the manifold than in the center. So by changing to a custom manifold, I can bring my turbo slightly more forward, which will give me the opportunity to run a non-tight 90 degree 3-inch radius out the back, which will be better for gas flow. So yeah, I think a custom manifold is the answer, and that's the way I'm going. Here we have a DIY log style manifold kit from the fabricator's warehouse. This is a really good solution because it allows me to put my turbo exactly where I want. So aftermarket exhaust manifolds range from $600 to north of a couple of grand. So this is a really good economical way to do it, because even if I bought an aftermarket one, I wouldn't know if it fits or not. A kit like this, I think this is the mild steel version. I chose mild steel because it's easy to work with, and I plan to get it ceramic coated anyway. There's no need for stainless steel. Really, the only benefit of stainless steel is that it doesn't rust. I think this kit costs around the $300 mark. I paid a bit more to get everything pre-notched for me. Chris from the Fabricator's Warehouse was so helpful. I told him what project I was doing, and I think he got really stoked on it. So he went ahead and did some extra work that he normally wouldn't have done. One of the reasons why I picked a kit like this is because I've never designed an exhaust manifold before, and at the end of the day, it's a performance part as well as being a structural part, because it has to take the load of the turbo. And there's some super high temperatures that go through it. So I'm paying for Chris's knowledge here. He's designed and built a heap of these. Paying for knowledge is underrated. Honestly, sure, I could get the materials cheaper, but to design and build one this good first time, there's just no way I could do it for the money. This is a really good solution if you're looking for a custom manifold and you don't know exactly where your turbo wants to go. Just weld one yourself. All you need is a TIG torch. I've got to do some fabricating, I guess, but you know, I've been really looking forward to this. It's just another part on the car that I get to say is mine, which is even cooler. Come on this journey with me. I've never made an exhaust manifold before, so I'm pumped to see how this one turns out. I'm going to put this hot rolled steel plate into vinegar to remove the mill scale and leave it overnight to soak. For those of you who don't know about mill scale really affects the welding process as it melts at a higher temperature than the actual steel and introduces a lot of impurities. So the impurities float to the surface during the curing process, and the mill scale is extremely hard. So you want to get rid of it basically to ensure that your parts are really strong and don't fatigue and crack as easily. A good way to do it is with vinegar. You can also use a flappy disc or a wire brush, but since this is a sort of a precision part, I am using vinegar. I guess, do I do this with everything? Not really. Look, maybe I probably should, but I guess this is a manifold. Like I've said so many times, really high temperatures running through here. So I am doing it properly with this one because I do not want it to fatigue and crack. It is under load and it is under high temperatures. I am taking this one a bit more seriously than, like a tab or something like that. Look at the amount of mill scale that came off the exhaust flange. Vinegar straight back into the bottles, and I'll put it straight back into the kitchen for some cooking use. So really important to keep the flange flat while I'm welding it. So I've got a 100 by 100 piece of blue bar, 5mm thick, just an offcut from my local steel supplier. So this is really important because I don't want to do any post machining. Obviously, it's really important to seal between the exhaust flange and the block. And if I don't clamp down to something while I'm welding it, there's a fair chance that it'll distort because we're going to be putting a lot of heat through the welding process. So this is the solution. So I'm just using an M10 tap now to put some thread in them so then I can clamp the flange down to this piece. And I'm using some hex head bolts rather, which are low profiles. In comparison to a normal bolt, it'll be easier to get the TIG torch around it because this will be quite an intricate piece. The reason I drilled and tapped the holes on this is because I am planning on taking the manifold off and on a few times just to test it out on the car and to check the turbo position. So it makes sense for me to drill and tap rather than tack weld it, which is another way you could definitely do it. I've got my flange bolted up to my blue bar. So I guess the plan of attack here is I've got to weld this collector to this. And then I've got some pieces of pipe in here that I have to fit in, and I've got to obviously cut a slot out, and then I've got to port it all, and then I've got to do some welding. So there's quite a bit of work in it. Not really a clue what I'm doing. Not super comfortable with pipe, but let's do it. If you're doing one of these, just remember, as soon as the next piece is tacked in place, you'll never be able to get to this piece with a Dremel again. So if you want to make the inside as smooth as possible for fluid flow, just Dremel as you go, and yeah, have a good think about the sequence in which you're doing it. So I've just had the Dremel in this one, and I've made this weld around here really smooth on the inside, which will obviously be better for fluid flow. So I've just finished off this side. The welds actually aren't too bad. I do like white welding mild steel. Next step is to cut these down to the correct length. You can see here that the collector is not the right height, and Chris left them long so then I could, you know, adjust and figure out, just in case I wanted to cut these down and have it sit a bit closer to the engine, but I don't want that. So I've got to cut these down and then put these pieces of pipe in there. Stuffed up the tubes. I cut them a little bit too short. As you can see here, I don't back myself to fill that gap. I don't think it's quite the right thing to do either. So I started profiling some new ones just with the angle grinder and some tape and a pen. And this is a new one, so it fits way better. Obviously, I've still got to cut out on the inside of this, but I won't know what to cut out until I go put it on the car and figure out where the turbo is going to go. So I guess the plan is sort of profile this one and then put it on the car and then figure out this angle. I just got done with the turbo manifold on the car for the first time. I marked out the angles that I thought that the collector needs to be on, and I'm going to do some full passes on this tube here so then I can port it out before I weld the collector on. Otherwise I'll never be able to get to this inside tube and I'll never be able to make it smooth. I just finished welding up these bits of pipe. I did a full pass, which looks pretty good. And then I ported out these, so I just cleaned up the inside and I welded on the inside here. And then the next step is to profile the collector. So that's what I've got to cut out. And then, yeah, I'll be able to weld it all up. Weld sequence, I'm going to do a quarter pass on 6 and 3, then a quarter pass on the other side on 5 and 2. And then 4 and 1 back on the other side. I don't really know. I guess I don't think there's any real disadvantages to doing quarter passes. I guess I'm really cautious of it warping. If I pump a heap of heat into this end, then I reckon it'd have more chance of distorting than, you know, doing quarter pass and distributing the heat evenly. I don't really know. Again, it's just a gut feel, but that's what I'm doing. Just finished up doing a first pass on everything. Really happy with it overall. There are a few bits that need a little bit of touching up. I guess I did ask Chris about whether I should do 2 passes or just the one. And he said, you know, if it's a good first pass, it should be okay. So there are a few bits that I don't like that were hard to get to next to the T3 flange, for example. It was really hard to get a torch in there, so I'll probably do a second pass over there, but I probably won't do a second pass over the whole lot. I'm pretty happy with it. So the plan now is to port out the inside on the 3 and 4 join. Just need to port out in there, and then I will wire brush everything down, and then we're pretty much good to go. I just need to figure out what I'm going to do with these. I would like some studs in there, but yeah, just got to figure out the right ones to get. I'm just going to clean up the insides of these from the backside. So for those of you who have been following along, you'll know that I'm not a super experienced welder. I'm just giving it a crack. I guess I try to have no pinholes because I thought that would be exhaust leak territory. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to test this. I guess just bang it on the car and see. I really have tried to do my best welding this, and I've gone over welds twice just to make sure that there's no pinholes or any leaks. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I need to show you. I put it out in the better light so you can sort of see in full detail. So not perfect, but not a terrible job either. There we have it. That's one custom manifold for my Barra. So I'm really happy with the turbo position. I'm thinking either ceramic coat the hot side or a turbo blanket. I'm not quite sure yet. I'd love to hear from anyone with experience. I know obviously I've crapped on about how hot these things get. If anyone's had any experience, let me know in the comments and yeah, give me a suggestion. So now I've got to redo obviously the intercooler piping. The new turbo outlet is here, so I'm thinking a 90-degree bend into there, and then I've got to put an airbox in here somewhere. So I've got to figure out all that, and I've also got to do an exhaust. I've got this bolt-up flange to the back of the turbo, and then I'll make a custom exhaust. Let's talk about why I wanted to keep a stock manifold. So one of the reasons was because I think the stock manifolds, especially the FG, is quite a good design. It's got a really short runner length, so it's quite good for responsiveness, and that is what I want. That's the setup I'm going for. I don't really care about bulk power. I just want a really responsive car. So that's one of the reasons. I guess another reason is that it's a cast iron, I believe it's cast iron, and I think they have a really high nickel content. So I think they're quite good at surviving the heat cycles in comparison to a steam pipe or a stainless steel. So they're much more hardy than a custom manifold, is my understanding. Feel free, if you know more, fact check me in the comments. Another reason is lower center of gravity, so it doesn't seem like much, but keeping the weight down low is always a good thing. I don't really like just having stuff up here because it looks sick. I think down low is better, and I think that the airflow is actually better through the frame rails as well, which is better for convective heat dissipation. Those are some of the reasons that I would have liked to have kept a stock manifold. So a quick little design comparison between the manifolds. Fundamentally, I think this one's pretty similar to the FGs. A lot of people do froth on the equal length runners. One of the reasons why I didn't do it, I just didn't think I had the space. Maybe I do looking back at it, but again, response is the main thing that I'm chasing, so I don't really care about it. I think shorter runners is better for me. At the end of the day, I'm not a dyno tuner though. Feel free to add to that in the comments. That's my first go at an exhaust manifold, all done and dusted. I'm really happy with the result. If anyone's got any suggestions whether I should use studs or bolts on the Barra manifold to fasten the turbo, please let me know in the comments. I haven't had a heap of experience with it. I guess I'm hyper aware that these things go through really big heat cycles and they go through a lot of them. So, and I am aware that on the Falcon there is a problem with the studs coming undone, or the nuts on the studs rather. So I don't really know if there is a good solution, or just use a shit ton of red Loctite and be done with it. I feel like the studs are going to be stuck in there anyway. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any ideas for that one. So I guess what's next is to check that the manifold doesn't leak. I don't really know when a good time to do this is. I think that it would be a good time to check before I send it off to get coated, but there's a lot of work that I've got to do. Obviously, I've got to plumb in all the new turbo lines. Obviously, I can't use any of the stock lines anymore because of the turbo position, so I'll have to do all that. I feel like we're getting into the build now. This is the fun part for me. I love doing this stuff in my spare time, making stuff, not just making stuff fit. In the next episode, I'll be making an exhaust. I've got some 3-inch stainless mandrel bends. If you're interested in the build, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Please leave a comment. I love reading the feedback. Cheers, guys.